Have you ever felt there was a pair of eyes watching you from the dark, even when you were completely alone? It could be in a quiet house or deep forests, where every sound rings out with terrifying clarity. Today, I will tell you a story. Just listening to the end will make you glance behind your back. If you think you're brave enough, sit back, relax, and listen carefully to every word I'm about to say. It all started one hot summer. I'm just a teenager looking to earn some pocket money by babysitting. During that time, I got used to caring for the neighbors' children, whom I knew well, in familiar houses full of laughter and light. But that summer, I took the risk to step outside that comfort zone. A classified ad on Craigslist, as simple and regular as any other. Weekend babysitter wanted. Good pay. Nothing unusual. That family lives in a small house in the suburbs, just a few minutes' drive from the city. But one thing made me hesitate. That house was close to the edge of a dense forest, with no neighbors around, only long shadows of falling trees and deserted dirt roads. I reassured myself with familiar arguments. It's just a few nights. It's normal for people to live near the forest. And the most important thing, wages are twice as high as other places. That afternoon, I carried my backpack and got out of the car. The golden afternoon sunlight spreads across the lawn and wild flowers around the house. The house looked pretty cute. It was a little cabin-type thing, with a wooden porch and a few lanterns hanging out front. I found it beautiful and peaceful, and thought I was worrying too much. The boy I was hired to babysit was about 5 or 6 years old, with loose brown hair and clear gray eyes. The boy was strangely silent. He didn't smile or even look straight at me once. When I tried to start a conversation, he only responded with tiny nods, as if the words were something foreign. The boy's parents, the people who hired me, didn't stay long either. They hastily stuffed a list of phone numbers and other notes into my hands, then got in the car and sped away, as if they were running away from this place. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving me and the boy standing in a house that was too quiet, too empty. And outside was a chillingly silent forest. At first, the evening passed quite commonly. I cooked him pasta, turned on the TV for background sound, and carefully checked the rooms. No wonder. There was only the sound of the wind blowing through the trees outside, soft as distant whispers. I put the boy to bed early, as the note requested. His bedroom is located upstairs, right next to a small window that looks straight into the forest. I closed the curtain, coaxed him to sleep, then quietly tiptoed down. I was about to open my phone when I suddenly heard footsteps. Light, very light, coming from upstairs. I stopped, raised my head, and listened. Nothing. Maybe it's just the boy tossing and turning, I told myself. Just the sound of old wooden floors creaking. And then the boy, who I thought was fast asleep, asked from upstairs, his voice quiet but clear. "Honey, did you see my mother out in the forest?" I stood frozen in the middle of the stairs, feeling like the temperature in the room had just dropped a few degrees. "Your mother?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice calm despite my heart pounding. The boy did not answer immediately. There was only silence, long, heavy, wrapping tightly around me like a cold curtain. I swallowed hard and decided to go upstairs, telling myself I needed to get the boy back to sleep. But when I approached the door, I saw the boy sitting up, eyes wide open, staring at the window curtain. The thin curtain swayed slightly, as if an invisible hand had just passed. "What did you say?" I asked, approaching the bed, not taking my eyes off the curtain. The boy pointed toward the window. "My mother is out there," he whispered. I walked to the door, slightly pulled open the curtain, and glanced out. Just thick darkness and bare trees swaying in the wind. There's no one. I let down the curtain and smiled wryly, trying to act normal. "There's no one out there, honey. You were dreaming." The boy did not respond. He quietly lay down, facing the wall, pulling the blanket over his head. I returned to the living room, but my mind couldn't rest. Something isn't right. A vague feeling of being watched crept under my skin. The wind whistled through the window, blending into the quiet sounds of the forest at night, occasionally interspersed with a screeching sound like an old gate being gently pushed. I decided to recheck the door. Everything is locked from the inside. I even pulled the primary door latch to make it secure. The living room lights were still on. The TV played boring programs. Everything looked normal. But then, as I turned around to return to the sofa, the TV light flickered for a moment, and I caught a glimpse of a person's shadow. In just a split second, it passed out the window. I turned around, my heart jumping into my throat. Nothing, just a dark lawn, faint lanterns swaying in the wind. I rubbed my eyes and exhaled slowly. Maybe I'm just dizzy. I reassured myself with various reasons. It's just the wind. Probably tired. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking outside for some reason. I turned off the living room lights to reduce the reflection on the glass door, then glanced out again. And this time I'm sure I did see clearly. A thin figure with long flowing hair stood motionless at the edge of the forest among the dark trees. The distance was far enough that I couldn't see his face. But there's one thing I'm sure of. That person was staring at the house. And even though the wind blew strongly, that person's hair and dress stood motionless, as if the world outside had stopped. I stepped back, hit the table's edge, and almost cried out. My breathing was rapid. My hands were shaking. I quickly closed the curtains and leaned against the wall, my heart beating wildly. It's just someone lost, I told myself, but I didn't believe those words. How could anyone get lost in the middle of the night, in the middle of such a deep forest? I turned on all the downstairs lights, creating a fragile belt of light, as if that fragile light could protect me from what was lurking outside. I decided to go upstairs to check on the boy again, but as I walked up the first flight of stairs, I suddenly heard it knock on the door, lightly, slowly. 3 hours. Clack, clack, clack. I stood dumbfounded. Not the sound of the wind, not the sound of trees. Someone, or something, is knocking on the door. The knock on the door rang again. Clack, clack, clack. Slowly and deliberately, it was as if someone knew exactly what he was doing and enjoyed every second of waiting on the other side of the door. I swallowed hard, my whole body tensed, my brain screaming at all the options. Don't open the door. Don't move. Don't breathe hard. I backed away towards the kitchen, where I could reach the kitchen knife hanging on the wall. My fingers tightened around the handle of the knife. Sweat drenched my palms. The knocking on the door stopped. Absolute silence covered the house. Only the pounding sound of my heart echoed in my ears. I tiptoed to the next window and slightly opened the curtain. No one stood there, not a single person in sight. I was still shaking when a soft giggle rang next to the window. A high-pitched, distorted laugh like that of a child, but it sounded chillingly cold. I was startled and fell to the floor. The knife slipped from his hand, clattering on the wooden surface. At that moment, tiny, gentle footsteps sounded from upstairs. I froze, raised my head, and looked upstairs. Boy! The boy is still sleeping. I stood up, trembling step by step, climbing the stairs. The hallway light is pale yellow, flickering like it's about to go out. Every step I took was as heavy as a stone. My heart felt like it was about to explode in my chest. When I opened the boy's bedroom door, the room was dark. The boy was no longer lying in bed. I turned on the room light. Empty. The blanket had been pulled down the floor, and the window was wide open. I rushed to the window and looked out. I saw two silhouettes at the forest's edge in the pale moonlight. A short, childish figure. One is taller, skinny, with long flowing hair. The boy. And that woman. I shouted, calling for the boy, my voice cracking with panic. But the two never returned. They just stood there, motionless, like stone figures. The woman slowly bent down and hugged the boy. I couldn't see her face clearly, only her sticky black hair and unusually long arms. Suddenly, the boy raised his head and looked straight at me. His eyes were empty, entirely without any vitality. And then both disappeared, as if swallowed by darkness. I quickly ran downstairs, turned on all the lights in the house, and locked all the doors. I called the phone, my hand shaking so much that I dialed the wrong number. When I finally connected, I screamed for help, but the phone signal was intermittent. The sound was distorted, mixed with a strange, crunching sound. A long while later, only a monotonous beeping sound could be heard. I huddled in the corner of the room, still clutching my useless phone. My eyes didn't dare leave the main door, where the darkness outside was like a hungry animal stalking its prey. Time passes slowly. I don't dare sleep. I don't dare close my eyes. And then, from the corner of the living room, where the TV was turned off, a whisper rang out. "You shouldn't have come here." A chill ran down my spine. I turned around, but there was no one. There was only thick darkness and dead silence. I just sat like that, leaning against the wall, my eyes unblinking. Each intermittent breath seemed to choke in my throat. The darkness seemed to have shape. It crept into every corner of the house, crawled through tiny gaps, and whispered words no one could understand. I don't know how long I sat like that. A gentle sound like scratching sounded from the main door. I turned around, my blood freezing in my veins. A thin old piece of paper was stuffed through the door crack. I gingerly approached, my hands trembling, and picked it up. The handwriting was scrawled. The ink was smudged. Just one line. "Give my child back." My heart skipped a beat. Those words were hammered into my brain, each as heavy as lead. I threw the paper on the floor and rushed upstairs to check again, hoping like crazy that the boy was still there, that it was all just a long nightmare. But the bedroom is empty. The bed is empty. Only a thin blanket and a tiny jacket were left hanging on the edge of the bed. I suddenly remembered in the small kitchen downstairs. There was a picture frame on the wall, which I saw while cooking dinner. An old, faded photo. I jumped down and ripped it off the wall. In the photo is a young couple holding their tiny son. The woman, long hair and vague smile, was the figure I saw tonight, standing still in the middle of the forest. But the strangest thing is that the photo is older than I thought. Too old. The color has yellowed. Their outfits look like they were from a few decades ago, not now. A scary thought arose in me. Something could have happened to the family that used to live here. Maybe they never left. The darkness outside the window stirred again. I shivered, feeling a pair of eyes staring at me through the wall, through the curtain. I turned away, picked up my backpack, staggered out the back door, and started running. I don't remember how far I ran. I remember the tree trunks rushing past in the dim light, the branches and leaves brushing against my face and hands, leaving painful streaks. I remember the sound of the wind whistling in my ears, and a soft voice rang out right behind me. Don't come back, but I'm back. Just a moment, and I saw it. A tall, thin figure with long hair and deep black eyes glided close to the ground, following me in the dark. I screamed and ran as fast as possible until I saw car lights in the distance. A kind passerby saved me that night, taking me back to town. The police were called, but they found nothing but an empty, abandoned house, messy footprints around the yard, and a child's jacket stuck on a rotting wooden fence. No one found the boy. No one found the mother. From that night on, I never accepted a job to babysit in the suburbs again. I even avoid places near the forest, tiny houses with gardens and lanterns hanging dimly on the porch. Occasionally, when passing by a park or a deserted street, I feel a pair of eyes following me, hiding behind trees, behind long shadows. And sometimes, on moonless nights, I hear from somewhere very close a familiar whisper, "Give my child back." Sometimes what we can't see is truly the scariest thing. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. If you love scary stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share with those who also love the creepy feeling. And remember, always watch for dark corners, partially open windows, and swaying tree shadows, because sometimes they are watching you.